Everybody's kind of back on time early, so a little auxiliary practice. When I'm really into obsessing, I don't know if you ever obsess, but if I'm really into an obsessive thought pattern, if you told me to get into my body, I don't have a body right then. The thoughts are so overwhelming that I can't break that cycle. And there's a wonderful little practice called no thought is worth thinking about. And what you do is you introduce it on the level of thought. So you're going around and around, I can't believe this, blah, blah, blah. No thought is worth thinking about. It helps me if I use my name. Mary, no thought is worth thinking about. But, blah, 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 blah. Mary, no thought is worth thinking about. Mary, no thought is worth thinking. And it might take a while. It's wonderful walking the dog or being out or doing something. What it does is it begins to break the obsessive cycle. Just enough that as grace kind of rushes in, it's usually then very easy to focus on the body because your neck is killing you or you have a massive headache or, the body has a lot to say. But no thought is worth thinking about is a wonderful practice for that repetitive cycle that many of us have. Often it's a story we've told ourselves over and over again. There they go again. They always do that. Blah, 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 blah. That's just very hard to interrupt. So you don't interrupt it. You just introduce this into it and say it out loud if you can. If nobody's around. But it really saves lives. Remember delta, it stands for change. Okay, the fruits of welcoming. I went to an introductory Zen workshop years ago, and they did the fruits of Zen, the ABCs of Zen, and I loved this. The ABCs of Zen were a bigger container. Meaning, you don't grow, but there's more space interiorly. You're a bigger container, like for grace. Well, the ABCs of welcoming, for me, are a change in our attitude, behavior, which is really becomes a change in our consciousness. Remember what we started with? Consciousness. Now, many of you may know that beloved Serenity prayer. God grant me this serenity, the courage, and the wisdom. See, I used to get mad at the Serenity prayer when people would say that. Either let go and let God, or God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Because I was always like, how? How? What I found is welcoming is a path to that how. If I am willing to stay in my experience and to feel my feelings as they manifest in my body, it becomes very apparent when you are to act, when you're not to act. It's not a question of figuring it out. It's miraculous. What leaves it's not yours to do. It resolves on its own. That's the biggest thing in the world. Did you know stuff happens without you doing anything? That really, it's always like, really? So sometimes it's the pause. But this begins to manifest. And the attitude of serenity or acceptance, true acceptance for me is serenity, is that that's where it starts. I have to accept and allow that it is happening. It is real, and this is my reaction to it. What I'm feeling is happening. If that's where I start, grace can free flow out of that. If you need to do something, you will. And what I have found is the people to do or that you have to speak to, they'll be provided. You know, I used to think we had to make it happen, but it doesn't. All of a sudden, they'll be right there in your path. Or they'll call, or there's an occasion that everybody just, it manifests. But generally, for me, it's when I've let go of needing to do something with it and I've done this. Okay, what do I do now? Really? You know? And it's there. A lot of it is coming just to the attitude to accept that it really is. It does hurt, or we are aging, or this is happening, that's happening. Okay. And the wisdom to know the difference is given. It's not that something I have to do. It's like breathe and trust that God will reveal more to you and to me. As we have the capacity to understand and see it. It's tremendously powerful what happens in this prayer practice. Even though it may not be noticeable in the ordinary course of events. Do you know in the beginning of Open Mind, Open Heart, it's one of the most beautiful passages Thomas has, that contemplative prayer is the world in which God can do anything? Let me read it to you. This is what welcoming is totally at the service of in centering prayer. Contemplative prayer is the world in which God can do anything. To move into that realm is the greatest adventure. It is to be open to the infinite, and hence infinite possibilities. Our private, self-made worlds come to an end. A new world appears within and around us, and the impossible becomes an everyday experience. Yet, the world that prayer reveals is barely noticeable in the ordinary course of events. You might find yourself with that person that's driving you crazy, and you're nice. Or you don't react in your normal way. No one else in the room may even be aware of it. But all of a sudden you are, wow, they didn't get to me. And you know it isn't you. The gift when we really surrender to these practices is we realize we're not doing it. But God is doing in us what we could not do. And what we finally surrendered to is that we couldn't do it. It's like we walk along and God's saying, do you want any help? No, thanks. Sure, nope, I got it. Nope. And you know, you fall down and make a mess of it. Are you sure you don't want help? No, I don't think so yet. So we sit there a while longer, and finally, are you sure? Okay, well, maybe you can take this. And that's what Thomas is talking about, which isn't light spiritual teaching, as I make a mess, but just a few of the lines. Powerlessness is our greatest treasure. And this is what's important. To be in too big a hurry to get over our difficulties is a mistake because, sounds like Teilhard, you do not know how valuable they are from God's perspective, for without them, you may never be transformed as deeply and as thoroughly. your greatest wound ends up to be your greatest treasure, because nothing can so heal. And it keeps going on. The title of this one, God is already here. You know that line, there's nowhere to go, you're already there? I used to keep over my bed one of those little New Yorker cartoons, and it was just the pen and ink, or the ink and paper, of two Buddhist monks, a young one and an old one. The young one was sitting there on the zafu with the little sandals, and he had a very quizzical look on his face. And the old one was filled with consternation. And the caption was, "Nothing happens next, this is it." Because sometimes we come into these prayer practices like, okay, I'm going to get better. And the first couple weeks we kind of feel better and nicer. But if you go with it for a while, your psychological experience of yourself is actually that you're getting worse. You're not, but what's changing is, you know how Father Thomas talks about? The lights are being turned out, and now God says, oh, you're ready to see yourself a little more clearly. So it's never to discourage us, because the fruits of it are humility and hopefully a lot of humor, but you begin to see. So psychologically you may feel, this isn't for me, because I didn't ever see myself as jealous or angry, or I'm not like that. Well, not all the time maybe, but maybe that's just a piece you're being asked to look at. And again, not to be belittled, but to just bring you closer. And to give it with a little more gentleness to this God that's just attempting to love us into life. So we breathe into and feel what we're feeling in our bodies. Welcome, and we let go.